Let's dive into the process of learning the nomenclature or naming conventions of inorganic compounds. However, before we get into that, it's essential to revisit the periodic table, focusing particularly on the three main classification of elements. We'll start with metalloids. Metalloids are positioned between the metals on the left side and nonmetals on the right side. They exhibit a blend of properties sharing characteristic of both metals and nonmetals. Next, we need to understand the charges associated with different group of elements. For example, elements in group 1 typically carry a 1 positive charge. Those in group 2 have a 2 plus charge, and so on. However, when we move to the center of the periodic table, we encounter the transition metals. These elements are unique because they don't have fixed charges. Instead, they can exhibit multiple positive charges depending on the specific element and its chemical environment, such as chromium having 2 plus, 3 plus, and 6 plus, iron having 2 plus and 3 plus. Now let's clarify some key terms. Valence electron. It is defined to be the electrons located in the outermost shell of an atom and are considered crucial in chemical bonding. Valency. It is the measure of an element's ability to bond, which can be defined as the number of electrons a metal can lose. For example, group 1 metal can lose 1, group 2 can lose 2, and group 3 metals can lose 3. For nonmetals, valency is defined to be the number of electrons needed to gain to achieve a full outer shell in accordance with the octet rule. Octet rule says that for an element to be stable, they should need to have 8 electrons. For example, elements in group 4 needs 4 more electrons for them to achieve 8, which is followed by group 5 needing 3, group 6 needing 2, and group 7 needing 1. Following this, let's examine the differences between metals and nonmetals. Metals and nonmetals are distinct in several ways. For instance, metals typically form cation. Cation are positively charged ions. Why? Because they are known to be electron donors. So whenever they are donating their valence electron, they turn to be positive. For nonmetals, they are considered anion or negatively charged ions. This is because they are known to be electron receiver. The reason why they stay negative. Metals. Metals are also known as good conductors of electricity. Looking into its structure, it has freely moving electrons that allows electricity to be conducted. Moving on to the type of bonds, we have ionic and covalent. As to ionic bonds, it is occurring between metals and nonmetals. In these bonds, the metal donate electrons to the nonmetal. The metal is the giver and the nonmetal is the receiver. This transfer of electrons results in the formation of positive and negative ions. Covalent. Covalent, on the other hand, is a bond between nonmetals. Instead of transferring electrons, nonmetals share electrons with each other. This mutual sharing of electrons helps both atoms achieve a stable electron configuration. Here are some examples. Sodium chloride and magnesium oxides are ionic compounds because they are consist of metals, which are your sodium and magnesium, and your nonmetals, which are your chlorine and oxygen. For water and carbon dioxide, they are an example of covalent compounds because they are sharing electrons. To illustrate these concepts with an analogy, let's take a look at scenario A. Emily, representing metal, has a blanket she doesn't need, so she gives it to Sarah, who needs it. They show how metals donate electrons, represented by giving away the blanket, and nonmetals receive them. This is an example of ionic. Let's go to scenario B. Two nonmetals both need a blanket, so they decide to share it. This illustrates how nonmetals share electrons in a covalent bond. This analogy highlights the fundamental differences between ionic and covalent bonds, having scenario A as ionic and scenario B as covalent. I will now present a list of common polyatomic ions. Polyatomic ions, also known as polyions, consist of two or more covalently bonded atoms that together carry a net charge. For example, carbonate. It is composed of nonmetal carbon and nonmetal oxygen. Together, they have a charge of 2 minus. They function as a single unit in a chemical reaction and compounds. These ions are crucial in various chemical processes. Here are some examples of commonly cited in class. We have carbonate, hydroxide, nitrate, nitrite, phosphate, phosphite, sulfate, and sulfite. Additionally, here is another list of polyatomic ions arranged alphabetically. Furthermore, let's discuss the differences between organic and inorganic compounds. Organic compounds include substances such as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They generally have the following properties. They often dissolve in water, though solubility can vary. They always contain carbon and hydrogen, which is collectively known as hydrocarbons. They typically form covalent bonds. In contrast, salts, water, oxygens are examples for inorganic compounds. They usually exhibit the following characteristic. They often are soluble in water. They typically contain positive and negative ions. They usually form ionic bonds. These distinctions highlight the different chemical behaviors and bonding characteristics of organic and inorganic compounds. Let's then explore today's focus, a guide for naming inorganic compounds. This guide will help you understand the naming conventions for both ionic and covalent compounds through a yes or no mechanism. First, ask yourself if the compound contains a metal. If your answer is yes, then follow the rules for naming ionic compounds. If no, use the naming rules for covalent compounds. Additionally, here are some useful vocabulary. First, we have here the word binary. Binary actually refers to the compounds containing only two elements, whereas the use of ternary emphasizes the compounds containing more than two elements. This approach will help you systematically name inorganic compounds based on their composition. Focusing on the rules for naming ionic compounds, it's important to remember that ionic compound is consists of metals and nonmetals. To name an ionic compound in more detail, ask yourself this question first. Does the compound contain a metal with multiple charges? If no, follow the rules for naming simple ionic compounds where the metal has a fixed charge. If yes, follow the rules for naming ionic compounds with metals that can have multiple charges using Roman numerals to indicate the metal's charge. This approach will help you accurately name ionic compounds based on the natures of metal's charge. After answering the question, does the compound contain a metal with multiple charges? No. The next thing you need to take note of is to count the number of elements. If it has two elements, it is termed as a ionic binary, and it is composed of metal and non-metal. For example, we have here your Na, which is your metal, and your Cl will be your non-metal. The rules are simple. First, you just need to name the metal as is. So look for it in the periodic table and copy the name that is identified there. So your Na is sodium. Next, your non-metal. Your non-metal should just be changed to IDE. So originally, I have Cl here, which is chlorine, but the rule says that I need to change the suffix into IDE, so that would make me have chloride. So the name of NaCl is sodium chloride. Next, let's try the following. Li, name it as is. So in your periodic table, it is named as lithium. F is fluorine, but change that to IDE, so you would have it as fluoride. Next to which would be your Ca, which is named in your periodic table as calcium. Then your O is oxygen and have a suffix of IDE, so you would have it as oxide. And lastly, we have K. K is potassium. And we have your Br, originally as bromine, but change that to IDE, so you would be having bromide. Those are the rules for naming a ionic binary. Now let's go to ionic ternary. Ionic ternary are composed of three or more elements, which should be composed of metal and a polyion. So we have here an example, which is Na serving as metal, and CO3 is one of your polyion. So we have here the list of the common polyatomic ions. So the rules for this one would just be naming both as is. So what do I mean by that? Look at Na. Na again is sodium. Then you should also have the list of your polyions. In this case, we have CO3. Your CO3 is named as carbonate. So you would have sodium carbonate. And that would be my final answer for Na2CO3. Now moving forward, let's have tried this activity. Li, we were able to name it a while ago, which would be your lithium. OH. OH in the list of your polyions is named as hydroxide. So I would have this one hydroxide. Next to it, I have calcium. NO2 is named as nitrite. And lastly, I have K, which is potassium. And looking for your SO4, I have sulfate. So again, these are the rules for ionic compounds that doesn't have multiple charges. Let's jump into the yes answer. After answering the question, does the compound contain a metal with multiple charges? Yes. The next thing you need to do is to also count the number of elements, in which you can identify whether the compound is ionic binary if it's composed of two elements, and ionic ternary if it has three or more elements. And take note that naming ionic compounds with multiple charges, you need to use Roman numeral. What is this for? Remember that for this part of the discussion, we are going to utilize metals having two or more charges. For example, chromium. It has three possible charges, which are 2, 3, and 6. For instance, we are going to react chromium with oxygen. Because it has three possible charges, it can also yield to three possible combination, which would be CrO, Cr2O3, and CrO3. What would be your strategy in knowing which specific charge were utilized by chromium? The first thing you need to do is to check the element that it is reacting with. In this case, it is reacting with your oxygen, which has a charge of 2 minus. So with that in mind, let's see. So your chromium, if it would be utilized 2, and your oxygen, given that it's 2 minus, it will also have 2. You can further simplify it because they are divisible by 2, so that would make it 1 and 1. Then the next thing you need to do is to crisscross. So in that case, it will be resulting to CrO. Because of this, chromium is said to be utilizing 2. And so you're going to represent the charge used using Roman numeral 2. How about if your chromium would be utilizing the next charge, which is 3? So again, chromium 3, oxygen 2. You can no longer simplify it. So the next thing you need to do is to crisscross. And that will result to Cr2O3. So if I am going to name that, I would have chromium, then Roman numeral 3. Emphasizing that this compound is utilizing 3 as the charge of chromium. Moving forward, we have here the last possible charge of chromium, which is Cr6 and oxygen 2. So in this case, you can see that the charges can be further simplified because they are divisible by 2. So this one would become 3, this one would become 1, crisscross, then that will result to this compound. So if I am going to be more specific, chromium then did utilize 6 as the charge for this given compound. That is how you're going to emphasize the charge used by a metal having 2 or more charges. With that, let's move forward to discussing ionic binary. Remember, ionic binary is composed of metal. Let's try to have that. Metal. And of course, non-metal. Looking at your periodic table, you have here iron. Your iron has the possibility of having 2 or 3 as its charge. Using the strategy I gave you, remember to have the charge of your oxygen. Oxygen will always have 2. So in that case, which do you think were utilized by iron here? Is it 2 or is it 3? To answer this question, I would be utilizing 3. Why? Because if you're going to look at that, you can no longer simplify it, so you can crisscross it, and it will be equal to this. Following the rules of naming, name the metal first. So I would have iron. Then the next thing that you need to do is to emphasize which charge were utilized by iron. I can also apply the reverse crisscross, remembering that 3 here is from iron. So the Roman numeral here would be 3. Next thing that you need to do is to change the suffix of oxygen to IDE. So I will be having iron 3 oxide. Now, let's have your copper. Okay, let me just move this one. So, for us to look at it, okay, let me just zoom in. So, your copper has the possible charge 1 and 2. Again, your copper has a possible charge of 1 or 2. In this case, remember that oxygen again is 2. So, which do you think is the charge used by copper? Is it 2 or is it 1? The answer to this question is actually 1. How is that possible? Because remember, 1 and 2, the next thing you need to do is to crisscross. That will result to this. Same way, just name the metal, emphasize the charge used. In this case, it did utilize 1. Rule for the nonmetal, you just need to change it to IDE. So you would have copper 1 oxide. Moving on. So again, possible charge of nickel is 2 and 3. And it's still being paired with oxygen having a charge of 2. So which one do you think did nickel utilize? Is it 2 or is it 3? My answer would of course be 2. Because if you're going to analyze it, this one would be cancelled out or would be simplified because they are both divisible by 2. Then crisscross, then you will have this specific compound. So that will tell us to name Ni as nickel, emphasizing the charge used would be 2, and the nonmetal should be changed to IDE, so I would be having oxide. That is how you're going to have a unit binary. Going over a unit ternary, we have here your metal and polyatomic ions. Here is the list of your polyion. The same strategy would be utilized. Identify first the element of the ions that are reacting with your metals. So in this case, we have CO3 with a charge of 2. Looking at the periodic table, iron 2 has the possibility of having a charge 2 plus or 3 plus. So which do you think did iron utilize in this compound? The answer here is 3. Because if you're going to compare the charges, you can no longer simplify it. So the next thing you need to do is to crisscross. So let's have and go over the rules for naming ionic ternary again. So you just need to name the metal first, identify the charge used by using Roman numeral, and lastly is to use the name of the polyions. So we have here iron, utilizing 3 as its charge, and the name of your polyion, which is carbonate. Going over the next example, we have copper. Your copper is having 1 or 2 as its possible charge. First, identify your OH. Your OH here has 1 as its charge. So if you're going to analyze it, your copper is also using 1. Crisscross, then you will have this. So the name of the compound must be copper. Charge use is a 1. Then we have, of course, your polyion, which is named as hydroxide. Lastly, we have nickel. We have here possible charges of nickel would be 2 or 3. How will we know it? Again, go back to the charge of your polyion. In this case, it has a charge of 3. So analyzing between 2 or 3, nickel here is having 3. So you can further simplify it. 1 to 1, then crisscross, then you will have this compound. Naming it again, we have Ni as nickel. Charge used would be 3. And the name of the polyion would be phosphate. So I have nickel 3 phosphate. And this is the end of ionic ternary for compounds having multiple charges. Let's go over the summary for the rules of ionic compounds. For the main question, does the compound contain a metal with multiple charges? And if your answer is no, then the rules would be, if it's ionic binary, you just need to name the metal first. The nonmetals should have a suffix that would be ending to IDE. For ionic ternary, the metal and the polyion should be named as is. And if your answer to the question is yes, they are using the same rule. It's just that for the yes answer, we need to emphasize the use of Roman numeral. This is because metals that we are working here are having 2 or more possible charges. So by utilizing Roman numeral, we can emphasize the specific charge that were used in a compound. Let's work on covalent compounds. Remember that covalent compounds is a bond between nonmetals. The first question that you need to take note of is if the first element of the compound is hydrogen. If the answer is no, then you should be following the rules on the left, which would be composed of diatomic element and covalent binary. And if it is yes, then we will know that that is an acid which has 2 types, namely binary acid and oxyacids. Let's focus on the no answer. If covalent compounds doesn't start with hydrogen, first you need to identify the number of elements. Because if you have one element, then you consider this element as diatomic element. Reviewing this part, remember that element is when it stands on its own and it's not bonded with other elements. If that's the case, you can classify them as monoatomic and diatomic. For diatomic, we have to include your group 7, which are your halogens, including hydrogen, oxygen, and we have here nitrogen. So if you're going to write them down, they should always have 2 as their subscript. The rest of the element, which would not be included in the list, would be considered monoatomic and would have 1 as their subscript. Moving forward, if it's composed of 2 elements, you will term that one as covalent binary. It would be composed of nonmetal and nonmetal. Let's then focus on diatomic element. For this one, it's very simple. You just need to name the element as is. So H2 is named as hydrogen, O2 is oxygen, and N2 is nitrogen. Moving forward, we have covalent binary. Remember that covalent binary is composed of 2 nonmetals. Let's focus on the rules. The first nonmetal should be named as is, and you just need to add prefixes. What are these prefixes? So if you're going to look at prefixes, we have mono if it has 1, di is 2, tri is 3, and so on and so forth. Next to which would be the second nonmetal would be changed into IDE, plus adding prefixes again. So for covalent compounds, prefix matter. Let's have the first example. I will name this one carbon. How many carbon do we have? We only have 1. Should we use mono? According to the rule, if the first nonmetals or first nonmetal has 1, you cannot use mono. Mono can only be utilized in the second name. So in this case, you just need to name it as carbon. Next to it, O, change that to IDE, so you would be having oxide. How many oxygen can you see there? You have 2. And what is the prefix for 2? You have di. So the name of this element is carbon dioxide. Let's compare it to CO. Again, your C is named as carbon. You have only one, but the rule says that you cannot use mono in the first nonmetal. Moving forward, we have oxygen. Change that to IDE, you have oxide. Looking at it, it has only one atom. So this time you can use the word mono. Let me emphasize it again. Mono is only utilized in the second nonmetal. Let's have the other examples. First, name it hydrogen. How many hydrogen do you have there? You have 2, so you would have dihydrogen. Next to it, you have oxide. How many oxygen? You have 1, so you would use the word monoxide. And lastly, we have nitrogen. How many nitrogen do you have there? You have 2, so you would be using di. O is oxide. And because you have 3, you should be using the prefix which is tri. So completely, we'll call it dinitrogen trioxide. If the answer to the question is the first element hydrogen is yes, that means you're working with an acid. Acid has 2 types. The first one would be called binary acid, and it is composed of hydrogen and non-metal. The next one would be oxyacids. It is termed oxyacid because of the presence of oxygen in the polyion that is combined with hydrogen. Let's have first the rules for binary acids. The rule for binary acid will always be to start with the term hydro. Next to it would be to look for the nonmetal. In this case, I have chlorine, and change the suffix into IC. So I would have it hydrochloric and just add the word acid. The same thing would be followed. Again, I need to use the word hydro, then change the suffix into IC, bromic, and add the word acid. Lastly, again, start with hydro, then iodine, change that to IC, then you would have iodic, and the word acid. Moving on to your oxyacids. When you are naming oxyacids, it's very important for you to give priority to the original name of your polyions. Why is this important? That is because if you're going to look at oxyacids, if the polyion ending is ATE, you need to change the suffix into IC and add the word acid. But if your polyion is ending in ITE, your suffix must be OUS and just the word acid. Now let's have examples for this. CO3. The list tells us that CO3 is originally named as carbonate. And the rule says if it ends with ATE, you need to change this further with a suffix that is IC and add the word acid. So this element's name would be carbonic acid. Let's proceed to the second one. NO3 is nitrate. Looking at the rules, if it ends with ATE, change that to IC and add the word acid. That makes me name it as nitric acid. And lastly, we have here NO2. In this case, it ends with ITE. Emphasizing the rule, ITE should be changed to OUS and add the word acid. So my compound should be named as nitrous acid. So this is the end of oxyacids. It's important to note that when dealing with covalent compounds, if hydrogen is the first element, it should be treated as an acid. In this case, you should follow the naming rules for binary acids or oxyacids. If hydrogen is not the first element, then follow the rules for naming binary covalent compounds or diatomic. That's it, and we're done. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure to review these naming conventions and don't hesitate to revisit this video whenever you need a refresher. Bye!